how are boys, as opposed to girls, affected by a breakdown in family structure? Because that's another obvious phenomenon alongside the economy, which seems, again, this is against our intuition. We think, oh, boys will be okay. Mm-hmm. Boys are resilient. Boys are tough. They're going to be great. But in fact, they seem to be, to use crude terms, be fucked up much more by the different shape of the family than girls, who seem to be actually more resilient.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you've put the line in, broadly the right place. I mean, it is something like the top fifth, 2/5, third, whatever, kind of okay. And actually college-educated Americans are as likely to get married as their parents and a bit more likely to stay married than their parents. So marriage is, alive and well at the top of US society in ways, by the way, that nobody in the feminist movement predicted in the 70s. The whole point of women's economic independence was to render marriage redundant. I think one of the great paradoxes of how it's turned out is that the most economically powerful women in the history of the world, college-educated American women, right? I'll just simplification, but like incredibly powerful, are now the most likely to get and stay married, which was not what Gloria Steinem had in mind. Although Gloria Steinem just got married to Christian Bale's father. I don't know if you saw that.
Really?
Yeah, it's a whole different.
She
thing.
would argue, of course, that getting married, she was against was the sense of marriage as a fate,
exactly.
which women had to do in order to survive economically.
She said it's a choice.
And so I'm just going to make that her. But and obviously that is a great thing. It is to choose a marriage, however hard it is, and God knows it's really hard, is a different phenomenon than being forced into it as a function of economic or social.
Correct.
But that's great. That is a huge success, right?
You've taken out the economic dependency that was the fatal flaw in that traditional family form. Now, there were lots of things about that family form that worked pretty well. Pretty much everyone knew what their job was. It was pretty stable. The kids generally were raised by both parents. There was a division of labor. The fatal flaw was it was incredibly unfair to women, and it put them in a position of economic dependence to men. And so that chain of dependency has been very largely and successfully broken in advanced economies. The result of that is that for a number of women, they can choose not to be married or have kids outside marriage. So it's 40% of kids now born outside marriage in the US. Only a minority of American children will now grow up with both biological parents. And particularly for less educated and poorer families, when the relationship breaks up, the relationship with the dad very often is the one that suffers. And as you just alluded to, I'll use a slightly more social scientific term than fucked up for what's happened to boys, but there's this phrase in psychology where they talk about orchids and dandelions. Dandelions will be fine, whatever happens. Orchids are very, very sensitive to their environment. And it turns out that boys are a bit more orchid and girls are a bit more dandelion. And in terms of family stability, economic poverty, neighborhood poverty, it's clear that boys are more affected by those disadvantages than girls are. And so that does create this intergenerational class inequality, which is where I think we should be worried, whether you're left or right. Like if you're worried about inequality and you're on the left, you're worried about economic inequality, you've got to worry about boys and men, because unless boys and men start doing better, we're going to have more and more economic inequality. And by the way, if you're worried about families and you're on the right, you've really got to worry about how boys and men are doing, including the low income ones.